My name is George Harlan. I am 72 years old as I sit down to tell this story. My hands aren't as steady as they once were, and my voice, well, it carries more weight now. Not volume, weight. The kind that comes from years of holding things in. For most of my life, I believed family was permanent. Jobs ended, friends drifted, neighbors moved. But family? Family was the one thing you could lean on when everything else failed. I believed that right up until the day I sat alone in a crowded graduation hall, wearing a brand new navy suit, clapping for a son who never came looking for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where everything truly began. I met my wife Ellen in 1976. We were both young, idealistic, and broke in ways only people who grew up poor truly understand. Ellen was studying nursing. I was working my way through a teaching degree, grading papers at night and shelving books at the public library on weekends. She laughed easily, loudly, the kind of laugh that filled rooms and made strangers turn their heads and smile. When she laughed, you felt invited into the world. We married 2 years later in a small church with folding chairs and donated flowers. No honeymoon, we couldn't afford it. But we didn't care. We believed time would eventually give us everything we needed. Ryan was born 5 years after that. I still remember holding him for the first time. He wrapped his tiny fingers around my index finger like he was making a promise. I whispered to him then, something Ellen never knew I said. "I won't let life break you," I told him. "I'll carry the heavy parts for you." And for a long time, I did. We weren't wealthy. Teachers and nurses don't become wealthy. But we were careful. Disciplined. Every dollar had a job. College funds, emergency savings, retirement. Ellen labeled envelopes with neat handwriting. I tracked spreadsheets. Ryan never went without. He had braces, summer camps, music lessons he quit after 6 weeks. We never complained. We believed that giving him opportunities was our responsibility. When Ellen got sick, everything changed. Cancer doesn't arrive politely. It doesn't knock. It storms in and rearranges your entire life without asking permission. For 3 years, I watched my wife shrink, not just physically, though that too, but in spirit. She tried to stay strong for Ryan. Even when the chemo took her hair, she wore bright scarves and joked about starting a new fashion trend. The night before she died, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Make sure Ryan finishes school." Those were her last clear words. I took them as a command. Ryan was 21 when he dropped out of college the first time. He said the pressure was too much, that he needed time to find himself. I didn't argue. I remembered Ellen's voice. I remembered my promise. I told him life gives second chances. When he moved back home, I paid off his remaining tuition balance. When he decided to try again later, business degree this time, I didn't hesitate. I paid everything. Tuition, books, rent, groceries, utilities, a new laptop, streaming services, date nights. I even sent an extra $800 every month for what he called incidentals. I never asked questions. I never asked for receipts. I only asked for a phone call every couple of weeks. And for a while, that was enough. Graduation approached like a sunrise I'd been waiting years to see. I bought a new suit, the first in 15 years, navy blue, tailored just enough to make me stand a little straighter. I practiced tying my tie in the mirror like a nervous teenager. I booked a hotel near campus, drove 6 hours the night before, stopping twice just to stretch my legs and calm my nerves. I sat in that auditorium surrounded by families holding balloons and flowers. I clapped for strangers. I wiped my eyes for other people's children. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Tuesdays used to be grocery days for Ellen and me. Old habits die slowly. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at a shopping list I no longer really needed, when I saw Ryan's name light up the screen. My heart still reacted before my mind could stop it. "Hey, Dad," he said. His voice was light, casual, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't stood alone in a crowd of celebrating families a month earlier. "Have you been?" I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. "I've been fine," I said, and in that moment, I realized it was the first honest thing I'd said about my feelings in years. Ryan didn't ask why I sounded distant. He didn't ask about the drive or the suit or why I hadn't posted congratulations online like everyone else. He went straight to business. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice like this was a secret between us. "Jenna and I found the perfect house, really perfect. Safe neighborhood, good schools. We're just a little short on the down payment, $20,000. Could you help us out? I'll pay you back once my job bonus comes in." I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Ellen and I used to sit grading papers late into the night, the same table where Ryan once cried over a failed math test while Ellen rubbed his back and told him grades didn't define him. I felt something crack, not loudly, quietly, like ice giving way under slow pressure. "Congratulations again on graduating, son," I said softly. "Too bad I wasn't special enough to celebrate with you." The silence on the other end was immediate and heavy. Then I heard Jenna's voice, sharp and impatient, somewhere nearby. "Is that your dad? Put him on speaker." Ryan hesitated. I could hear it in his breathing. "Dad," he said, "it was just a small thing. Jenna's family wanted—" I waited where we agreed. I waited for 2 hours. I drove 6 hours each way. I bought a suit just for that day, and you couldn't even text me? More silence. Then Jenna took the phone. "George," she said, sighing dramatically, "you're being emotional. Graduation days are chaotic. We're sorry you feel left out, but honestly, you're turning this into something it's not." I looked around my quiet kitchen. Ellen's empty chair, the ticking clock. "I'm turning it into exactly what it is, and I'm done financing a life that doesn't include me." I hung up. 2 days later, they came to my house. No call, no warning. I opened the door and saw Ryan standing behind Jenna, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding mine. Jenna stood straight, chin lifted, holding a folder. "Dad," Ryan began, "we need to talk." They stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Ryan gestured around the living room. "You've been acting strange lately, withdrawing money, buying random stuff, tools, cameras, that expensive telescope. We're worried." Jenna nodded solemnly. "At your age, confusion happens. We just want to help manage things before someone takes advantage of you." I stared at them. The woodworking tools were stacked neatly in the garage, the camera equipment carefully researched, the telescope, my first dream purchase in decades, still in its box. "I'm not confused," I said. "I'm finally awake." Jenna opened the folder. "We've spoken to a lawyer," she said. "There's a process for appointing a guardian if someone can't manage their finances responsibly." The room felt suddenly very small. "Get out," I said, calmly. They didn't move. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Mr. Daniel Carter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. "George," he said, "this is more common than you think." That sentence broke something open inside me. Over the following weeks, I learned what betrayal looks like when it wears legal language.
Ryan and Jenna filed for guardianship. They claimed I was showing early dementia, financial recklessness, social withdrawal. They submitted bank statements.
The silence after the court ruling was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I went home to a house that felt different, lighter somehow, but also emptier. Ryan's childhood photos still lined the hallway. His graduation cap from high school hung crookedly on a hook by the stairs. I stood there for a long time, staring at a boy who no longer existed. That night, I didn't cry. Grief, I've learned, doesn't always arrive with tears. Sometimes it arrives as clarity. I changed my phone number the next day, blocked email addresses, installed a small camera by the front door, not out of fear, but out of finality. For the first time since Ellen died, I made a decision without considering how it might affect someone else. The idea of the RV had lived quietly in the back of my mind for decades. Ellen and I used to talk about it late at night after Ryan had gone to bed. We'd trace routes on old road maps, dreaming about red rock deserts and quiet forests. Someday, Ellen would say, when things slow down. Things never slowed down. Until now. I found her on a used lot outside town, 28 feet long, a little worn, solid bones. I named her Ellen's Star. Signing the papers felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. The first night on the road was terrifying. I parked at a quiet campground just outside the city limits. I didn't sleep much. Every unfamiliar sound felt amplified. But just before dawn, I stepped outside with a cup of coffee and looked up. The sky was darker than I'd seen in years. I set up my telescope with shaking hands, and there they were, stars I'd never seen, clusters, colors. Ellen would have loved this, I thought. I smiled for the first time in months. The Grand Canyon came next. I arrived just before sunset. I stood at the rim, wind brushing past me, feeling impossibly small and strangely whole. I whispered Ellen's name. For the first time since her death, it didn't hurt to say it. On the road, I met people who understood quiet loss. Widows, retired teachers, men who had outlived the roles that once defined them. Around campfires, stories came easily. No one asked how much money I'd given my son. They asked where I'd been, where I was headed. I learned how to sit with myself, how to cook simple meals, how to carve wood slowly, deliberately, how to forgive, not Ryan, but myself, for believing love had to be earned. One evening in Yellowstone, a woman named Margaret sat beside me as the sun dipped behind the trees. "Do you miss them?" she asked gently. I thought for a long time. "I miss who I thought they were," I said. She nodded. "That's the hardest goodbye." Months passed. I stopped measuring time by oblations. I started measuring it by sunrises. I mailed postcards to old friends, never to Ryan. One afternoon, while carving a small wooden bird, I realized something important. I was no longer waiting for an apology. That was freedom. Somewhere in Vermont, parked beneath a canopy of turning leaves, I realized I had stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. For years, my mind had been a courtroom of imagined apologies, Ryan explaining, me forgiving, a tidy ending. But real life rarely offers tidy endings, and that's okay. Aging teaches you something no book ever could. You begin to understand that dignity matters more than being right. Peace matters more than being needed, and self-respect matters more than belonging at any cost. I spent decades believing my value was measured by how much I could provide. But out here, on quiet roads and empty trails, I learned a new measurement: joy. In New Orleans, I listened to jazz drifting out of a small club and felt something loosen inside my chest. In the Florida Keys, I watched the sunrise over water so calm it looked unreal. In the deserts of Arizona, I learned that silence can be a companion instead of a threat. Each place left a mark. None of them asked me for anything. I heard through an old colleague that Ryan and Jenna had struggled after the court case. They sold the SUV, moved into a smaller place, both took full-time jobs. I felt no satisfaction hearing that, only distance. Healing doesn't always mean happiness. Sometimes it just means neutrality. One night, sitting by a campfire beneath a sky thick with stars, I spoke aloud to Ellen. "I finally did it," I told her. "I chose myself." The fire crackled. I imagined her smile. I'm 74 now. My hands are rough from carving wood. My shelves are filled with small creations: birds, bowls, stars. My telescope has shown me nebulae older than grief, and my days, quiet as they are, feel full. If you're listening to this and feel invisible, if you've given everything and been left out of the picture, if you're afraid that choosing yourself means ending up alone, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Alone is not the same as unloved, and freedom often arrives disguised as loss. Family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up. Sometimes it's the road. Sometimes it's finally being able to hear your own thoughts. Every postcard I send now carries the same signature: "Living the dream we saved for, George." Thank you for listening. This is George Harlan, somewhere on the open road, still moving forward, still breathing, still free.